Well, thank you, Eric, for the quick introduction. Like I said, I'm Doug Cupp. I'm not going to go quite into a big background for myself because when I was asked to do a lecture on knowing your roles, I didn't know how relevant my background would really be. So I'm really excited about this. And so we're going to get started with my favorite. And that is the cinnamon roll. This thing is so delicious. I mean, cinnamon and sugar and icing. Are you kidding me? It's the best. There's so many of them. You know, these get really hard. You gotta warm them up in the microwave for about 5 minutes, but they're good at dinner time, and you got one for breakfast, you got one for lunch. What? R-O-L-E-S? Not those. So we're gonna regroup real quick. Apparently there was a misunderstanding, and we're to discuss roles as in R-O-L-E-S. So sorry we kind of segued it, but we do know cinnamon rolls are delicious. So we're going to start this exercise real quick with knowing your roles, and we're going to do a little exercise. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, that would be great. If you don't have it, you can just kind of think about it. And what we're going to do is all of your roles, and you can make this to be life in general, that you're a mom or you're a dad or you're a husband or a wife, and then you do yard work and things like that. Or you can make it work that you're a wildfire mitigation specialist, a planner, town engineer, mayor, whatever it is, and all the things that you do. What are all those roles and responsibilities? So I have a little example of what I did, and it's just a little picture of me in it. And then here's all of my stuff. I'm a fire chief, and I'm a dad. I coach, recreate, I'm a listener. I have yard work. I have one right here, sexy time. You gotta make sure you have sexy time for your loved ones. But that's just really quick what I did. So we'll give you a few seconds to kind of think about all the roles and responsibilities that you have in your daily life. And I'll try to stay quiet for a second, but if you could really hurry the hell up, that would be greatly appreciated. We really don't have that much time. So I'm going to assume that you did an amazing job, and I have a question for you. And that question is, I want to know how many people, and this is rhetorical because I can't really see you or hear from you, but who has on their list is either a risk-based decision maker, or in general, did you put decision maker down? Or maybe risk manager. Did you put risk manager down? Unless you are a risk manager. I'm assuming by some of the stares that the answer is no. Which is really interesting because my next question is, why not? We make hundreds of decisions every day. And believe it or not, these are all risk-based decisions. Whether or not you're going to take time to brush your teeth. If you don't brush your teeth, you may end up with cavities. Whether or not I'm going to hit the snooze alarm. Are we going to hit the snooze alarm? The risk is I'm going to be late to work. So we make hundreds and hundreds of decisions. The one I fear the most is, does this outfit look good on me? Well, I guess maybe if you had some other outfits you could wear. I fear that one the most. I seem to never nail it. It seems to be a problem. But you have so many great outfits you could have worn besides that one. Never works out. But the key is that we are asked to make decisions after decisions after decisions. And this should really be on your number one item. You could have cheated on this and basically covered all of your roles and responsibilities with one word. Is I'm a decision maker. Then we're going to cover a little bit about recognition prime decision making that Gary Klein discovered in the 80s. He studied firefighters and how they made decisions so fast, and most of the time that they were accurate and right. And we found out is the mind is a very powerful thing, is that it can make snap decisions almost to where it was like ESP. And how often were they right? And what he found out is based on experience, is that when we apply our experience towards a new solution, that you have positive outcomes. And the problem sometimes falls with when you don't have a negative reaction from a decision. Your brain will think that that was a positive solution and will choose it again. The next problem is that when you are far removed from the new decision. So let's say a structural firefighter becomes a wildland firefighter, and they're going to try and apply that knowledge to a wildland incident. And it doesn't work out so well. You see people driving 3 hours emergent to a wildland fire because that's what they do every day. And I won't just pick on the structural firefighter trying to pretend to be wildland firefighters. Do you know how a hotshot firefighter puts out a kitchen fire? He burns out the living room. And so when you try to apply things that are too far removed, it doesn't work so well. And some of the other issues when we talk risk-based decision-making that we have is that we really become linear. Is when we look at one risk at a time. Enter 2020. 2020 has handed us this. New problems we have not had an opportunity to deal with. We don't have people that have dealt with it where we can ask them questions and how they dealt with it. And we necessarily haven't trained for this. So I'm going to give you a little bit. We know the word COVID created all kinds of problems. We have fires in 2020 that went 210,000 acres in one day. It used to be unheard of to have 25,000 acres in a day. That's nothing to what we've seen this year. And so when we're trying to apply previous experiences towards new problems, we suffer. 2020 has shown that not only are our brains magnificent and faster than any supercomputer, it can also be one of the biggest hindrance and make us look completely stupid. And any time that you're going to call someone stupid, just remember for the human resources aspect is you call the behavior stupid. So when you say you're stupid, you should replace it with when you talk, you sound stupid. So in our 2020, and this linear aspect is that we were asked to deal with like COVID. And we forgot about all the other risks. And so our minds, the way that it works out is that it wants to select the first plausible solution. It doesn't weigh options. It sees the first one and says, that's it, that'll work. I've done that in the past, and it's automatic. So if we backtrack in the early days of COVID, what did we do? The first solution that was plausible that we thought would work is stop having people gather, meet, travel, shut down businesses, shut everything down, shut work, everyone stay at home. 6 months, now we're looking at everything's back open, wear masks. How did we get there? Because we found out what didn't work, is that we did the first thing that could possibly work. We don't look at how we just transferred risk somewhere else, is that we transferred the risk on businesses shutting down and the economy. We didn't see that there would be social problems, behavioral problems, increase in suicides, things that are really long-term that our brains don't work well at. So enter 2020 once again, and I'm going to tell you a somber story here that there were people put in charge of the big problem. How are we going to deal with wildfires in COVID? Their problem was to deal with COVID. We forgot to deal with the aspect of fighting fires, fire mitigation, all the other things that took a back seat or transferred risk to us. So the national agenda when we set up NEMO teams to say how are we going to deal with 2020 and COVID and wildfire response was keep all fires small. I would agree that this seemed like it was a plausible. It's probably the first solution that seemed to make sense. But what did we really do? We transferred risks. By keeping fires small, we ended up having a lot of iron in the sky. And I was on scene of one of these horrific incidents. I was on the first Poli fire in Arizona, watching a helicopter struggle in the air, rock back and forth, power off, nose to the sky, and it fell. We did our best for a positive outcome of cutting a P line in, making an extraction point if there was a survivor. Air attack called in for bucket drops. It was fully involved. We dealt with the aftermath of not a possible solution. The smell of the jet fuel was amongst us. A visual that we'll never get out of our heads. We struggle immediately because the load that that helicopter was carrying seemed insufficient. I wouldn't say insufficient, not important. Water and Gatorade. When he jettisoned his load, he launched water and Gatorade onto the ground to try and save himself. This individual, I think, was a true hero. I believe that he had a mechanical issue. He was hovering over a heli spot where we all were, and he immediately left the area and aimed right towards a cliff. In my belief, he was trying to get away from us. He had a problem. So we were all there witnessing this site. Those discussions about risk-based decision-making came up. Why did we accept this amount of risk for water and Gatorade? So we started looking at things of this nature. We realized that we don't do well with actually identifying the real problem. That wasn't the problem. We were in the middle of a desert, 110 degrees, real remote. We all had to fly in. We all had to fly out. We had to fly in food, fly out our trash, fly in our chainsaws. Every mistake we made was another flight. Every time that dinner was sent to the wrong place, another flight to fix the problem. The cache of fuel flown to the wrong spot, had to fix it with another flight. Fly, 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 fly. It became disheartening to watch how many times that we were flying. 6 aircraft, small fire, 500 acres, no risk to people, houses, infrastructure, watersheds. Keep fire small. That was our job. Real remote. It's really disheartening of watching that go down and realizing that we just transferred the risk onto pilots and mechanical time and wear and tear on vehicles, drive time, all the things that we know have always been a problem, but something else took precedence. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that we look at things one at a time, very linear. And we don't see the aftermath until it's too late. So the next decision has to come is, are we going to fly out of here or hike in 110-degree weather? One hotshot crew, I'd asked how they were going to mitigate the risks. And he says, well, I have 50-50. 50 want to fly out because it's 110 degrees, it's a brutal hike, and there's danger and risk with that. The other half said, I'm not getting on a helicopter after what we just saw. So I asked him what he was going to do, and I was extremely impressed of the nonlinear approach that he made. He started weighing risks, and he goes, well, I can't fight the fear. I cannot make people get on something they're scared to death to do right now. The 110-degree hike is going to be brutal. And there's some fear there, but it's better. We're going to hike. So as their safety officer for the incident, I had made a decision and agreed upon our plan of strip down to shorts, not your PPE, even take your shelters out. Load with water, nutrition, everything to make the trip survivable. We did risk-based decision-making. Is the fire going to get them? No. The 110-degree weather is going to get them. And so we started this nonlinear approach, which ended up being very successful in the aftermath of this crash. Fast forward, we start to drift back to, is the flight necessary? So on Pine Gulch, I was the operations section chief, needed to fly my area to find out what the plan is going to be. I have a fear of flying now, which I never had before. Every little maneuver that happens, when it starts to tilt that little sideways, I'm like, it should be going straight. And it is the life of a helicopter, is that it does those maneuvers, and everything was unsettling. But then there are people to bring you back to reality of what we do. And I'm getting ready to get on this flight with a person that's going to be a division soup, and I think it was one of his first recon flights. This is one of my first since the crash. And the pilot now, I have iPads and iPhones, and they're all hooked up with the weather and maps and everything. That's really great for tools for them to do a better job. And we get on this, and I'm pretty shaken. He knows what I went through, this pilot did. And he snaps a selfie in the cockpit. And Tim, who is also in the cockpit goes, "Did you just snap a selfie?" He goes, "Yeah, it's my first day." So immediately settled me down. And I've known the pilot from 9 Fox for some time, and I've flown with him a lot. And so I have a lot of trust in him. But that was his way to lower my anxiety and risk that we're in good hands, that those things happen. But what happens is we're bad at the long game. And when we really look at how our minds work is that we're really bad at the long game of the causal effect. So when we're doing a wildfire mitigation project, planning for a new subdivision, whatever that might be. And it may be an insurance agent deciding whether or not that they're going to insure a set of homes in a high-risk wildfire area. Is that what are all those causal effects? What are all the chains that occur to happen? And I'm going to tell you a story of why we really kind of suck at this. Is that in India, they had a series of cobras that were in town in a marketplace. And they were really worried the people were not visiting the marketplace because of the dangers of cobras. Fix the cobra problem. And so that was the issue that they came up with. And so they put a bounty on cobras' heads. And so for every cobra someone killed and brought in would be, $10 or something. So of course people are smart and they figured out, well, I'll just breed cobras. So people started breeding cobras and bringing them in and made a ton of money. And once the government found out that this was happening, they canceled the program. Now there's no need for cobra breeders, if that's what they called them, and they let them go. So within a year, they had 10 times the amount of cobras that they had when they first had the problem. Because other people's problems were not cobras, it was poverty. And they were fixing their problem of poverty. And the government was worried about people visiting the marketplace and danger, and their problem was cobras. And so when you have mixed, ill-defined problems, you're going to run into issues. And this is where we just transfer risk to one another. And this is the exact case of whether it's the helicopter crash or whether it's cobras or whether it's COVID, we end up just transferring all the risk. And so when COVID came out in the wildfire world, keep things small, we talked about how everyone should drive a different vehicle so we're not in the same cab together. So we put 10 times the amount of people on the road. And we end up forcing ourselves to try to pick the first plausible solution versus really look at the long game of what really happens. And I'm going to tell you how this works, is that because our memories are attached to our emotions. And our emotions are the glue that create this. And this is how powerful our minds are. And so I want you to go back to a place where there might have been a severe emotion. And it may be something like where you have hit an animal with your car, whether it's a deer or a bear or a rabbit. Something runs out in front of you, and I'm going to ask you about that day. Did this occur during the daytime or nighttime? Was there a person in the car with you? How long ago was this? 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20? What type of car were you driving? And I'm guessing you can go back to that place of that moment where you may have hit a deer or something that really scared you behind the wheel of a car. Now I'm going to ask you another question. What did you do last Tuesday? Something that could have happened 15 years ago is ingrained in your brain. And all reactions are based on that moment of another time the deer may run out in front of you, or you almost rear-ended the car because you're texting. Whatever it may happen, it's going to be right there for you. You don't remember what happened last Tuesday because it was probably really irrelevant. Nothing really happened to draw an emotion. No fear, nothing that would bring significance. When we get into risk-based decision-making, we have to create a pathway for us to remember these things. And that's the way that we train here, where I work, is train for how we fight. And we create emotions with that, whether it's pride, fear of failure, anxiety, stress, just like it's going to be in the real day. And when we do something that we call mental simulations, is that it's based on mental modeling, is that you play an important game called What If? And if you're a planner or an engineer, it may look like this, is that you're going to do a proposal to either put in a WUI code or a mitigation project, or maybe keep a subdivision from going into a high-risk area, and you're going to look for a land swap agreement with a golf course or something that would actually create a fuel break. And so it doesn't have to be that fast hitting a deer, something of that nature. It could be something really slow moving. And this is what we do when we present a big type development aspect. We have people ask us the most brutal questions. How are you going to fund this? What is going to be the long-term plan for this? What if John Smith wants to do the same thing across the street and just berate us with every possible thing that a human would come up with, and we answer it? What happens is you find out that our problems are ill-defined, once again, and you're also prepared all the way through, all the way down the line of stating, this is step 1, this is step 2, step 4, and so on. And that way you don't end up with 10 times the amount of cobras that you did when you started the project. It's very similar to what we used to talk about of making a decision tree, is that when you do one aspect, what are the possible positive outcomes and what are the negative outcomes? Where are we going to be in that place? When I was young, I bought a motorcycle thinking it would make me more attractive to women. And I got the motorcycle, didn't think the whole thing through because the second part didn't work out. But the first part, I got a motorcycle and I had to learn how to drive it. And this is when I first started realizing the understanding of the game What If, of mental simulation and mental models for what could possibly happen in the risk-based decision-making. And my instructor would say, if a deer runs out in front of your motorcycle right now, what are you going to do? If this car switches lanes into your lane right now, what are you going to do? And he asked us to play this game constantly. And so whether or not that you're assessing risks at an immediate level, or whether or not you're a planner or a mitigation specialist or an agent, you can play this game over and over and over again. Because you may have a mitigation project and you're going to put fire on the ground and you're going to do a risk transfer, smoke in the air, possible an escape fire, when all you're really wanting to do is reduce the fuel load in an area, and you've created your own problem. So practice these aspects. Go through the mental modeling, play the games of what if, mental simulation. We use a sim table quite a bit here, is we're able to run a simulation of fuels into a neighborhood and then reduce the fuels by 50% and run the same fire again. We're able to switch the fuel model from brush to grass as if we did a prescribed fire. And we're able to run those. But the next piece that it's missing out of there is the human factor. Is we know that changing the fuels will work. But what risk transfer are we making to make that project happen? Are we going to put PSD on a helicopter and create that risk? Are we going to have the possibility of having an escape fire? Are we going to get a firefighter injured by doing a prescribed fire? Those are the pieces that you have to take to the next level. I hope this has been a little eye-opener. I hope I didn't stress your brains out too much and confuse you. I'm sure some of you wanted me to shut up so that you could go back to the normal life of just making quick decisions and living them out. But this stuff is really important. We're going to take a few minutes to open it up to some questions, but we're only going to have good questions. And so if you have bad questions, I'm going to ask you to go do some quiet time and think about what you have done. So I thank you for your time. I'm going to open it up for questions, and maybe we'll see each other in some risk-based decision-making of what you should be wearing next Tuesday.